The video had cut off, so it's going to be a part two. So you got 13 and 26 some minutes on the first part, and then I'm going to do the last little 13 minutes on a part two. So it's going to be two parts to what God is saying about the 777 decree. Okay, this is a judgment coming from the Most High God. All right, and this is just something that people need to understand and know. So here's the part two for you.
Those who ignored, mocked, or rejected you will have to live with the fact that they had access to something rare, something divine, and they let it slip away. Number 8, your assignment was a final test for those around you. Your presence in people's lives was never random. It was a test, not for you, but for them. How they treated you, how they responded to you, whether they listened or rejected you, all of it was being recorded. Some thought they were just dealing with another ordinary person, but in reality, they were dealing with a divine assignment. Throughout history, God has sent people as warnings, as opportunities, as second chances. But over and over again, the pattern repeats. They are ignored, mistreated, or attacked. Jesus himself was rejected in his own
That's
hometown.
all I'm gonna say. What a
Prophets were
job.
mocked, ridiculed, and even killed. The world has a history of failing these tests and suffering the consequences afterward. Some of the people you encountered had a chance to recognize who you were and align themselves accordingly, but instead they gossiped, doubted, or even worked against you. They had the opportunity to receive a blessing, but they chose to fail, not because they didn't know better, but because they refused to accept that God had placed something sacred right in front of them. Now the test is over. Their response has sealed their fate. The time they had to treat you correctly, to listen, to take heed, it's gone. Some will realize too late who you were and what you carried, but realization doesn't erase the judgment that follows. When God removes his chosen, it's not just about relocation. It's about closing the book on those who refuse to see. The test is graded. The results are in. And now they will live with what they chose. Number 9. The war is bigger than you. Your removal is a tactical move. Your life isn't just about you. Your purpose isn't just for your own fulfillment or comfort. You're a piece in a much bigger spiritual battle. And when God moves you, it's not random, it's strategic. A soldier doesn't ask why the general moves them from one position to another. They don't question the tactics, the timing, or the orders. They trust that there's a bigger plan, something unfolding beyond their own understanding. And in the same way, when God pulls you from one place to another, it's because your assignment has shifted. You might think you're in the right place, doing the right things, holding ground that's important. But God sees the battlefield from above, and he knows the whole strategy. And sometimes that means repositioning his chosen ones. When your role is done, when your presence in a certain place or season is no longer necessary, God moves you out so the war can be won in a different way. It's hard to understand this when you're in the middle of it. You might feel like you're being abandoned, sidelined, or even discarded. But the truth is, your removal is part of a larger tactical move. God isn't just concerned with one battle, he's looking at the entire war. And sometimes the best way to win is to shift the pieces in ways that are beyond our comprehension. Trusting God's timing and his strategy requires a level of faith that isn't about seeing the immediate result, but about believing that his plan goes beyond what we can grasp in the moment. When he removes you, it's not because you failed, it's because your position has changed. And now the war moves forward in a way that's bigger than you. Number 10. Some people were only protected because of your presence. What many don't realize is that your presence wasn't just a comfort to those around you, it was a shield. God's favor rested on places, people, and situations because of you. You were the covering they didn't deserve, the grace they couldn't earn. Your life was like a spiritual umbrella, extending protection and mercy where it wasn't asked for or even acknowledged. And all this time, while you were there, they were sheltered by the grace that God poured over you. But But when your assignment is over and God removes you, that umbrella is taken away. The grace they enjoyed, the protection they unknowingly leaned on, no longer covers them. The consequences they avoided while you were there will now catch up to them. Whether it was a family that stayed together, a company that flourished, or a community that thrived, all of it was possible because you were there, in the center of it, with God's favor surrounding you. The reality of your removal will hit hard. The peace that they didn't realize came from you, gone. The favor that seemed to follow them without explanation. Now they'll see it for what it truly was, borrowed, temporary, and tied to your presence. Some will try to call on that protection after you're gone, but it will be too late. The covering you provided was never theirs to keep. It was always a result of your obedience, your faith, and your assignment. For some, this will be a wake-up call, a harsh realization that the grace they took for granted has vanished, and now they'll have to face the consequences of their choices. And they'll wonder, perhaps too late, why they didn't recognize the weight of your presence sooner. Number 11, you were a temporary disruption, not a permanent fixture. You were never meant to be a permanent fixture. God's chosen ones are placed strategically, not to set up camp, but to create disruption. You weren't sent to blend in or to be a constant. You were a temporary force of divine disturbance, a wrecking ball designed to shake things up and get things moving. And let's be honest, that kind of fire doesn't burn forever in the same place. If you had stayed too long, if you had tried to settle in, that fire would have dimmed, and what was once a blaze of truth and change would have turned into a pile of cold ashes. God doesn't send his chosen to fit in, he sends them to unsettle. Whether it's a situation, a mindset, or a group of people, you were placed there to stir things up, to challenge, to awaken, and sometimes to make people uncomfortable. That's the job of the divine wrecking ball, to destroy what isn't built on truth, to tear down what isn't rooted in God's will, and to push people out of their complacency. But the job is never permanent. If you stayed too long, people would have stopped listening. The sting would have faded. The challenge would have been forgotten. God's fire doesn't exist to be smothered in familiarity. It's meant to burn brightly, intensely, and with purpose. And when the time comes for it to move on, it does so before it becomes dull. Your time in that place was always temporary. Your presence was never meant to last forever. You were sent to create a shift, to cause a stir, and then to move on. And when you leave, the echo of your disruption remains, leaving behind the very change that was needed. Number 12, you weren't supposed to see the harvest, only to plant in hard soil. Success doesn't always look the way we think it should. For many, success means seeing the fruit of their labor, watching their efforts turn into visible results. But for you, success wasn't about reaping, it was about planting. You were called to the hard ground, the places that others couldn't reach, the soil that was too dry or rocky for anyone else to work with. Your mission wasn't to gather the harvest, but to break through the tough, resistant places, tilling soil that seemed impossible to touch. It's easy to think your work was incomplete because you didn't see the growth, but your calling was never about visible results. You weren't meant to stay long enough to see the plants sprout or the crops grow. Your job was to prepare the land for someone else. You were the one cracking open hearts that had been closed for years, breaking down barriers in situations others thought were beyond repair. And even if you didn't see the fruit of your labor, you planted seeds in soil that others would eventually tend to. The reality is, not all seeds grow immediately. Some will take years to sprout, and others may never even be seen in your lifetime. But that doesn't mean your work wasn't valuable. You were a cultivator, not a harvester. Sometimes the hardest job is the one no one sees, the quiet, unseen work of preparing for a harvest you may never personally experience. Your mission was never about instant gratification. It was about planting seeds in places where others feared to tread, trusting that someone else would come along and gather the fruit. Number 13, your leaving marks the beginning of judgment, not the end of your influence. When God removes his chosen, it's never a quiet, unnoticed departure. It's a prophetic alarm, a clear signal that something is about to change, and not in the way people expect. You weren't just a presence, you were the last call, the final warning. The moment God pulls you out of a situation or removes you from a place, it's not the end of your influence, it marks the beginning of judgment. You were the last defense against what was coming. Think of it this way: your time there wasn't just to speak words, it was to hold back a wave of consequences, to intercede, to stand between God's wrath and those who needed mercy. While you were there, you may have felt like the voice that no one listened to, the person who wasn't respected, but your presence kept the storm at bay. Now that you've been removed, the storm is free to come. The systems, the people, the places you influence, they will now face the reality of their actions. This isn't about punishment for you. It's about the accountability of others. How they treated you, how they dismissed the warnings you gave, how they ignored the message you carried. It all has consequences. Your exit isn't the end of your legacy. It's the moment when they will have to answer for how they responded to what you brought. Those who mocked or mistreated you will now see the result of their refusal to recognize the messenger. And for some, the awakening will be too late. When God moves his chosen, the silence that follows isn't peace, it's a prelude to judgment. And for those who didn't listen, your departure will be the loudest reminder that they had their chance. Your mission was never meant to be glamorous. It wasn't about receiving accolades, fitting in, or gaining approval from those around you. It was always about obedience. You were called, you answered, and you did what you were sent to do. There was no need for applause, no longing for approval, because your reward was never tied to earthly recognition. It was about fulfilling your purpose, no matter how hard, lonely, or misunderstood it was. Now that it's time for you to leave, don't look back. What's done is done. Your assignment is sealed, and nothing can change that. The lives you touched, the seeds you planted, the words you spoke, they've all been accounted for. Your obedience was enough. No one can take away what God has written for you. You came, you obeyed, and now it's time to go. The work you did wasn't for you to see the outcome. It was to serve the greater purpose God had for you and for those around you. So don't second guess your journey or wonder if it was worth it. You were sent, you obeyed, and now you depart, just as it was written. Your time here is finished, and the rest is in God's hands. Trust that the impact you made will continue to ripple, whether you see it or not. You've done your part, and now, with your departure, you can walk away knowing you fulfilled your purpose exactly as it was meant to be. If this message resonated with you, don't just let it sit. Share it. There's someone out there who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected so you won't miss out on more powerful insights like this. Like the video if it struck a chord, and drop a comment to let us know your thoughts. What part of this hit home for you? Your voice matters, and it could be the reminder someone else needs. And don't forget to share this video. Maybe you've got a friend or family member who needs a wake-up call, a fresh perspective, or just a little nudge to remember they are not alone in this journey. Help them find the truth by sharing this with them. Let's keep the conversation going, spread the message, and remind ourselves we are all part of something much bigger. Your engagement means the world. Let's keep moving forward together. Thanks for watching.
Okay, there's the message. All right. All right. It says thinking of changing. Somebody may be thinking of changing their career or something like that. Something like that could be going on. Okay. I am your sacred magical high chief priestess, and I'm here to give you this. I guess it's a Father God's message. Okay. Okay. It's a universal message. All right. And it's for the chosen 144, and it's for those that they encounter on their journey. Okay. All right. And it's just to let you know the whole purpose of why we're here and why the things transpire the way they transpire. All right. One love, one love, one love. Like, share them with the video. I am your sacred magical high chief priestess. And I'm here to give you this collective general message read for whoever it may resonate with. And that would be Sun, Moon, Rising, Venus, North Node, wherever you may have it at in your chart. Air, fire, water, and earth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One love.